Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. We have a special guest with us during this segment. We'll take phone calls and get to more sound bites in the next hour. But I'm honored to welcome to our decision maker line retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. Lieutenant General Boykin was one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force. He commanded these warriors in combat operations, and during his career at one point for a stretch commanded all of the Army's Green Berets. Spent the last 4 years in the Army in Washington, D.C. as the U.S. Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. He is now Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council in Washington, D.C. General Boykin, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian, it's so good to be with you.
Well, always good to have you on with us, General Boykin, and specifically, I wanted to bring you on to talk about this dust-up over with this controversy in Benghazi. And let me just kind of give you carte blanche to start off with. How do you size this whole thing up as someone who's involved in special operations? You commanded our elite warriors in battle. Kind of what is your take on this circumstance right now from a general standpoint?
Well, first of all, Brian, this situation was somewhat predictable. Not the details of it, but when Zaman al-Zawahiri, the head of al-Qaeda, released a video the day before the events there in Benghazi, acknowledging that we had killed Abu Yahya al-Libi, which is the number 2 man in al-Qaeda, back in June, and called for revenge against the Americans, it should have been fairly obvious that something was going to happen, and most likely in that part of the world. So there should have been extra precautions that were taken on 9/11, the obviously a time that all Americans are very sensitive to what happened 11 years previously. So if you look at the situation there and you say, why did we have an ambassador with no real security in a place like Benghazi where there's already constant tribal fighting? And then look at the fact that every embassy in America has a Marine security guard. You go to London, Paris, Madrid, any place, you've got a Marine security guard there. And in one of the worst places in the world, on 9/11, the day after the head of al-Qaeda calls for revenge against the Americans, we've got an ambassador there with no real security.
Well, and I understand, General Boykin, that we did not have a single Marine in the country of Libya when this thing went down.
No, we did. We had no Marines there. We had no Marines, certainly no Marine security guard, but we really had, in August we had withdrawn the Special Forces security folks that were there. And I think it was just, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered about this, Brian.
Now, let me ask you this question, General. I've read some information indicating that protocol in a situation like this, that the White House, the Situation Room, the Pentagon, would have gotten word virtually immediately within a matter of minutes that an ambassador and a consulate was under attack. This is sovereign U.S. soil. I've read that protocol would dictate that message that an ambassador was under assault would have been hand-carried to an aide who was standing next to the president and would have responsibility to hand-deliver that written message to the president, meaning he would have found out in a matter of minutes, certainly within the hour, that this attack was underway. Can you confirm that or verify that in any way?
Brian, every administration that I have been served under, that would have indeed been the case. As soon as you've got an embassy, that, again, you said it, it's sovereign U.S. soil. By international law, it's sovereign U.S. territory. Every place I've ever been, and every administration, that the president would know that instantly. Someone would have come to him and told him directly that our embassy or our consulate was under attack.
Now, we know that the 2 Navy SEALs that died there, Tyrone Woods, Glenn Doherty, did not die till 4 o'clock in the morning Libya time, about 7 hours after the attack began. And so obviously the question is, why did the president not order some kind of assets to try to protect them, try to retrieve them, try to come to their aid? And it appears, certainly from my vantage point as a layman, that this is just a kind of a reckless disregard for American life that our commander-in-chief did not send some military assets to their side, to their help.
I totally agree with you, Brian, and keep in mind that you didn't have to go back to the continental United States to get those assets. Those assets were positioned in Europe and within a reasonably short distance from Benghazi. They could have gotten there. Now, I think the question that really needs to be asked of our president and this administration is, why didn't you put boots on the ground? And I've heard, some commentaries that said, well, they couldn't have gotten there in time. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. You put boots on the ground in there because you don't know what you're going to find. You don't know how long that fight's going to go on, and you don't know who may still be hiding somewhere in the area there that we can get in there and save. You put boots on the ground, and this administration did not do that. I believe this was a feeble effort, and I think it is for two primary reasons. One, the president's not engaged, and number two, I think that the commitment of military forces in the Islamic world runs against the grain of the base of our president.
Let me ask you this other question. I've read some, and it's just rumors, obviously, at this point, and General Ham is certainly as a good soldier. We're not going to hear anything from him about this, but that the order to stand down came when General Ham, who was AFRICOM, he was in charge there, when the word came to him that we had a consulate under attack, an ambassador under attack, we had an annex, a safe house that was taking mortar fire, that this was a live fire situation, General Ham was prepared to order his troops to go to Libya and take some action, and he received an order to stand down. And General Ham, according to what I've read, said, forget that. We've got American lives at risk. We're going in. And he was almost immediately relieved of his command. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any question that General Ham was immediately prepared to respond to this, and there are indications that he started actually moving forces, not into Benghazi, but moving them and positioning them. I don't think there's any question. Ham is a good man. I've known Ham for some time. Now, secondly, though, the rumors that Ham was relieved, I do not believe are true. Ham was in his office 3 days ago, and I have spoken to people that talked to him there in his office. I do not believe that he was relieved. So I think that is a rumor that has just taken on a life of its own. That said, Ham is changing command, but I understand it's because of a family situation, a health issue with a member of his family. But I do not believe Ham was relieved. But I can assure you that Ham was ready to put forces on the ground in there. But, Brian, there's another issue, and that is the fact that you've got Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean. Where was the Sixth Fleet? Why was there not an order to launch either Marines out of the Sixth Fleet or launch air cover to come in and try and provide some kind of support? Now that's a question that hasn't been answered.
Now, I've gotten some information that seems reliable that Tyrone Woods was actually up on the rooftop of the safe house, the annex there, and was actually laser painting the mortars that were firing on the annex, and one of those mortars is what took him out. And what I've read is that you wouldn't have somebody laser painting a mortar unless he anticipated that there were aerial assets or other assets that were in place to take out the target that he was laser painting. And so it strikes me, if this happened at 4 o'clock in the morning, perhaps it was a desperation move on the part of Tyrone Woods, that he was just hoping against hope that some assets had been deployed to come to their aid, and his last gasp effort was to try to laser paint the mortars that were going to destroy them otherwise. Any comment on that?
Well, I think that that's probably accurate because it took a couple of hours to get the drones up there. Now, the CIA has both armed and unarmed drones. One is strictly an intelligence platform, and the other one is just what it says. It's an armed platform used in the fire support role. And I believe that he knew that the drones were up there, and I think he probably was hoping that those drones were armed and that he'd be able to get some fire support, or that something out of the Sixth Fleet or an AC-130 out of Aviano would be down there to support him. But clearly there was no real effort to get the right kind of support in there to save these Americans' lives. And, Brian, let me just say, we have forces in Europe that are specifically designated to do just that. They are called in extremist counterterrorist forces. There's a Special Forces Battalion and a SEAL team located in Stuttgart. There are indications that Ham moved them to Sigonella, which was only about 450 miles away, in preparation for putting them on the ground in there, and it never happened. Why did it happen? And I think the right answer is because the administration never gave them the order to deploy.
We have just 60 seconds left, talking here with Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, retired, now Vice President for Family Research Council. Last question, General. Bottom line, what is your assessment of the conduct of our Commander-in-Chief in this circumstance?
I think this has to be investigated. I think that what we see is absolute reckless negligence on his part.
Our guest has been Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, retired from the Army, now serving as Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council. Again, one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force, commanded these elite warriors in combat, spent some time commanding all of the Army's Green Berets, spent the last 4 years in Army intelligence. And General Boykin, want to thank you again for taking time to be with us. As always, very informative and very instructive, and God bless you.
Hey, God bless you, Brian.
Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, very informative segment, and boy, I thought that assessment of the Commander-in-Chief's conduct in this circumstance was pretty stark and pretty direct. I thought that was actually pretty amazing for the General to be that forthright in his assessment of the President's conduct. Well, that's it for the first hour. When we come back at the top of the hour, we're going to have Dr. Cal Beisner on. We're going to get to your phone calls. We're not going to get to them till the next quarter hour. In the next hour, we'll talk with Cal Beisner at the top of the hour about those that are blaming Hurricane Sandy on global warming. Focal Point, AFR Talk. Back after the news.
American Family Radio, AFR Talk.